Thank you guys so much for watching Shorts Program 3. I'm here with two of our filmmakers, Rory Waudby-Tolley and Farhan Umedaly. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to get to talk to you guys. I think you guys have a lot in common, so this should be a good conversation. Rory, you made the animation, There's Something in the Water. And when our programming team first saw that film, we were just like laughing hysterically and just like, we haven't seen an environmental film or like a science-based film with that much humor in it. And I was like really just, I don't know, startled. And it was very refreshing because you still like learned a lot, but I was laughing like the whole time, which was also like kind of a conflicting, weird feeling, but in a good way. Could you talk about why using humor in your films is important to you?
Yeah, I think I come from an animation background as opposed to filmmaking, so I think all my work has humor through it, and I think animation has kind of got its own qualities that lend itself to that approach. And I think definitely more recently, animated documentary is a field that's kind of seems to be growing. But I do feel there's a tendency to use animation in documentary often to kind of show things that are harder to depict on film, which often tends to then make it quite dark actually, or often animated documentaries are very serious and often really beautiful and engaging. But this was obviously a very different approach, and having the real people I interviewed, but having them speak as these kind of caricatured versions, I think it lets what they say become funnier, and you can kind of play with the visuals on top of that and kind of edit at a kind of quicker pace to kind of keep the information rolling and bouncing ideas off. Because obviously the actual topic is very serious and devastating the community, but I think I wanted the kind of humanity of the people and the whole, just the ecosystem comes through how the people react to it, and somehow the cartoons with these real voices feels, I don't know, it has a weird effect that is funny, but also I think I don't know, it's playing with that disconnect, isn't it, between the sound and the visuals, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
Can you talk about, I'm sure a lot of people are curious watching your film about the process of like animating a documentary and what that kind of looks like?
Yeah, so I went out there and shot a lot of footage of the lake and met a lot of the people in the film. So I was basically invited to make this film by the producer Shannon, who already is involved in the community and he lives there and knows a lot of people. So that was really great that he connected me with all the people. And that's why at the beginning of the film I wanted to explain the context that I'm coming from another country with no knowledge of the place really at all. And I think that helps with the interviews as well, because I could come and ask very stupid questions and they could be like, oh, okay, you know nothing, let me explain from the beginning what's going on. And it gets this kind of, I guess, more informal tone to the interviews. So then the whole thing was kind of edited essentially like a podcast. So you had all the audio and bits of live action and archive footage put in, and then I'd just take the interviews and animate it based on photographs and videos I recorded. And it's really nice because you get to kind of, documentary lets you try lots of different styles. You don't have to create a sort of consistent visual universe. You can jump between, like, one character can look really cartoony, someone else can be done a bit more like scribbly style, and the audience just goes along with it. So that's really good.
Yeah. Farhan, you made Gigson, Our Land, Our Culture, Our Laws. This is your third year with the Freeland Film Fest, having a film with us, so we're pretty familiar with your work at this point. I was wondering if you could talk about, touch on your body of work and why it's important to you to tell stories that inspire. And stories that have impact and change.
Yeah, How long do you want that answer to be? Because I can make it my life story, and I don't want it to be that long. But I'll.
Um, you can go a couple minutes if you want to.
All right, I'll give you 2 minutes. Basically, the evolution of my life um, allowed me to basically, so I'm a scientist by trade, but then I'm creative, and I kind of found my way into producing videos for sustainable energy companies and solutions for our planet. I worked as an environmental consultant for renewable energy developments before, and I realized that the time I was living in was Canada was changing to become very kind of right wing in an unhealthy way, I'd say. Civil rights were being taken away from people. Like, we're trying to push through pipelines across Indigenous land and all the environmental protections that I had seen and come to know, and that kind of made Canada a great place to be and respected in the world, were being undermined. So I decided to take a stand with a very famous environmentalist named David Suzuki. His grandson and I teamed up to produce this first film called The Last Stand for Lily, which then catapulted me into this area. And what ended up happening there was we produced this film that helped stop a huge pipeline project. And I realized then that I had to become more than just a person that was going to make films about stopping things. I wanted to enable like positive change through film. So I started teaching Indigenous communities to produce their own films. So my position of, I have all of these things to work with, but some people don't, and they're the ones who need to have a voice. So that's but I sort of earned my trust and my passion for protecting the environment and looking at human rights in Canada and like the United States. Like, we're all built on colonization. And I feel like if we're walking on stolen land, well, it's an obligation to be part of the solution than looking elsewhere. Like, if you turn a blind eye, you're part of the problem. And it's just like Black Lives Matter, right? We all have to be part of the solution. So that's really the key driver. Life is very short. I'm only here for a short time. I want to have an impact before I'm gone, and that's my duty.
I love that. Rory, you also make science-based films. Can you talk about your background in that and why those subjects are important to you?
Yeah, well, a lot of the science ones, again, tend to be sort of commissioned films. And I think I've always been interested in science, and I watch a lot of these kind of videos. And yeah, I don't know. I think, again, animation lends itself to kind of showing, I suppose, in a kind of diagrammatic way, illustrating quite complicated scientific concepts that are maybe harder to visualize otherwise. But again, I always try and put humor in and try to sort of keep it from being too like heavy and show the human side. So I've done a video for Nature recently about vaccinations, for example, and it's kind of floats between obviously very serious stuff and then more of the science, but then showing the human impact through these characters and stuff. But I've also done narrative work, which again has quite a lot of science in it in a way. I've sort of been obsessed with the play of particularly kind of, I guess, physics and the atomic structure of the world around us, and how all this, you're aware of all this stuff that's so abstract, it's almost kind of spiritual, in how little sense it makes to your lived experience, if that makes any sense. So I'm interested in those kind of different realms of existence, I suppose. That sounds not scientific, but it is.
Artist science, I see it.
Exactly, yeah.
Farhan, can you talk about your relationship to the land? And I know you have films that take place in a lot of the same region. So what that land means to you and why that's important to share those stories there.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, it comes from that legacy of that initial film, which essentially the river that we help protect is called Skeena River. And that whole area that I'm filming a new documentary in, and I've done a few others like Giksan, that's all a part of that Skeena River area. My dog is actually named Skeena. I haven't, yeah. So like I'm very connected to there, and for instance, the people of Lakwa Lambs, they became like family to me through this process. And I earned some stripes with the Indigenous people there that I actually am somebody who's willing to put it on the line and stand up for what's right. And I personally believe that we shouldn't be looking at, you know, in Canada, there's this thing where there's Indigenous people and then there's all other people that settled here. Well, we're all Indigenous to planet Earth, and geopolitical boundaries don't make a lot of uh, sense to that, right? I mean, that's all a totally different animal. So we should stop thinking as if we're like the modern evolved people, and then Indigenous people are the ones who wanted it like it was pre-contact, and they have very primitive existence. Sometimes people think this way. Well, Indigenous culture, I mean, we're all indigenous to Earth. It's just a frame of mind. So indigeneity to me doesn't mean just, it means it's a frame of mind. It's how have you reconnected to who you and your ancestors once were? The disconnect and being in the rat race, trying to reach goals that are unachievable and happiness that you can't find. Sometimes the best things in life are right in front of you and are worth preserving. And that's part of this whole thing. I've really found like a soulful connection with the Indigenous people here. And I learned I get to enrich my life. My life is so enriched by just, I get to sit with hereditary chiefs that I'm speaking to them, and they're instilling wisdom in me. I feel like I'm just growing into such a, I just feel so much more growth personally. I'm so happy about what I'm doing. I live a dream. I love my life a lot. You can kind of tell.
I'm happy that you do the work you do too.
Thanks.
Can you talk, I know you were just we scheduled this around a shoot that you were just on. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a region of northern British Columbia, and this is an Indigenous territory. It's called Gitniao. And the Gitniao people have these two rivers, the Skeena and the Nass River on the other side. And the Nass River is the third most important river for sockeye salmon, which many Indigenous communities downstream and that they actually depend on for their survival and health and their way of life, their traditions and culture. Because of climate change, a lot of the creeks that salmon spawn in are now drying up, and other ones are becoming more important because they're glacial fed. So they're actually benefiting from climate change because of the glacial, the meltwater. But that's not going to last forever. And those particular creeks that have the glacial melt, mining companies are looking at staking these areas to develop major mines, which could destroy the entire Nass River watershed. And it's the wildest area of British Columbia in the sense that like it's not developed. It is like as it was largely, and you're seeing like that's why I could go into a creek and watch a grizzly bear catch like with its cubs and catch like wild sockeye salmon. Like there's very few places on Earth left like that. So we're trying to and we're launching an Indigenous protected area, which is another level of conservation. So generally, like parks in Canada, Indigenous people were still seen as an obstacle, and they were supposed to be forced onto reserves and to stay there. They weren't allowed to be on their traditional land, which is absolutely wrong. They've been there since the beginning of time and had been taking care of that land. So what we're doing is now we're declaring this area as an Indigenous protected area where they will be allowed to, and of course, there will be maintaining it the way they always have. And the Agitnao are very forward thinking. They're using cutting edge science along with their, that's in line with their traditional laws. So it's actually a great demonstration to the world that Indigenous culture is evolving to incorporate cutting edge science and technology as long as it's in line with what they believe.
We have this really great film in the festival. If you guys are interested in a topic, but in a different region, in Russia, there's a film in our lineup called Sockeye Salmon about Indigenous people in Russia and their relationship to sockeye salmon. And we have a pre-feature short that plays before that, another Indigenous film called Now is the Time, which is a New York Times Opstock film, but it's super cool. So you guys should check that out.
The parallel universe, it's so funny to see that exact same type of thing on the other side of the world, hey?
Totally.
Yeah.
Rory, I know you were just working with one of our advisory committee members Kurt Sensenbrenner on a new project. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's about PKU, which is it's a disease that I think Kurt has experience with and knows people and is quite involved in that community. And he's doing a series of films that kind of tell the story, again, kind of from less of a clinical, cold perspective, but more about people's lived experiences of how they deal with everyday life. So we've just done a little sort of pilot animated short, which is a similar kind of tone, I guess, to There's Something in the Water. It's kind of taking real interviews and real experiences and then kind of animating it in a way that's true to life, but also, I guess, kind of exaggerated for humour. But yeah, it's a really nice project to get involved in. Well,
I was lucky enough, Kurt sent me a copy to check out. So I'm excited for you guys to release that series and happy you guys are working together. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. I just wanted to wrap this up by letting you guys, if there's anything else that you wanted to share about your projects or your work, and also a place where people can follow you, whether that's on social media, follow your projects, or get involved with any of the projects featured in your film. Farhan, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, or in the handle is at VOVO Productions, and my website's vovoproductions.com. You can just email me through there if anybody wants to reach out, and yeah, feel free to be friends. I'm pretty active on social media. I got to do a better job of posting more photos, but I'm good with the stories. I'm learning.
He's really good at them. Definitely. Rory?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Rory_WT. There's more information about the film on there's something in the water.com, just all no punctuation. That should hopefully come up. RoryWT.com is my personal website if you want to see more stupid animation.
Okay, I'll grab those links from you after this and put them in the description of the Eventive page, so anyone watching, you guys can go there and just click right away. But thank you guys so much for joining me. It was really nice to get to talk to you, and I'm bummed that we're not all in person, but it's nice to talk to you this way.
Thanks for having us.
No, yeah, thanks for having us.